You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Good morning. It is Thursday morning, June 20th, the day of the summer solstice 2024. Let's just go straight to Phoenix, Arizona right now, because this is very unique especially for those of us who are not familiar with Arizona, and perhaps even for people familiar with it, but certainly for people who are not. So earlier, yesterday on Wednesday, that was the last day right before the monsoon moisture kicks in. So if it was any other state, Texas, I'm thinking of Texas, the Midwest, that's what I'm most familiar with, the East Coast. When moisture starts to kick in, the temperatures go down. But we have a very interesting situation because we have this double interesting. We have a ridge, which is a heat dome already. It's an upper ridge. We have going at 597 decimeter, which is over on the East Coast. And that's going to head out west. Going just straight west. Usually things go west to east. That's what we're used to. But once you're in the summertime or south of the jet stream, things could just go west, like hurricanes. Well, this heat dome just goes west, straight west, and heads to Phoenix, Arizona. It heads to around New Mexico. It centers itself around there. Phoenix, Arizona is included. Depending on the position of this high pressure, I'm not exactly sure where it's going to be centering itself. The National Weather Service of Phoenix also is not 100% sure, especially for the beginning part of next week. We'll talk about that in a second. But for now, the monsoon moisture kicks in. The National Weather Service tells us for the first time this summer into Phoenix, Arizona. And at the same time, that's when parts of Arizona go under an excessive heat warning once again. So we have the moisture increasing. Dew points will be increasing. The sun is very efficient at heating dry air. It's not as efficient at heating humid air. So if this was the Midwest, the temperatures would go a little bit down. But in Phoenix, Arizona, the temperatures are actually going to go up. Now, why? The reason is because we have something called subsidence, which is also associated with the heat dome. That's going to increase. Now, subsidence has been defined in the past as sinking air, which produces compressional warming. It's part of the heat dome, and it's something which prevents really a lot of the precipitation from forming. Nonetheless, there is a chance for precipitation. In fact, a pretty good chance for thunderstorms, especially dry thunderstorms by the time you get into the lower desert, or perhaps some light rain. There's that chance in Arizona, and in fact, the National Weather Service is telling us that outflows from these thunderstorms have a good potential at producing blowing dust. So we have moisture increasing, nothing like Gulf Coast humidity. For the most part, dew points rising into the 50s, occasionally the 60s, but by the here's another actually very interesting thing. So we were saying in the Midwest, a lot of times as you head into the afternoon, the dew points tend to go down a lot of the times. Well, in the next several days in Phoenix, Arizona, the dew points actually go up during the afternoon. They tend to remain under 60, at times into the low 60s, at times a minor heat index, but it's still going to feel hotter than what it usually feels like. Plus, the temperatures are going to be higher. Temperatures going up to 115 at times over the next several days for Phoenix, Arizona. The big shockaroo is the Gulf. When the winds come from the Gulf of California into Yuma, Arizona, the dew points actually hit 70 degrees, and that's what's going to be happening this Shabbos on Saturday, while temperatures remain in the hundreds. So, it's not what Texas has seen last summer and this summer, but I think that's something unique, what's been going on in Texas, Corpus Christi, before this tropical storm happened, where you had 80-degree dew points and triple-digit heat. But the desert Southwest, it's, you have Yuma, Arizona. For Yuma, Arizona, this happens occasionally, even more than occasionally. You'll have sudden bursts. This is what I've noticed. just of high dew point air. Those people that live out there are more familiar with what exactly goes on. But there have been times I know where I checked up on hourly conditions, dew point 73 degrees in Yuma, Arizona, just like that, while much of the rest of Arizona remained dry. Well, increase the moisture over much of Arizona. The Phoenix, Arizona National Weather Service again tells us that the thunderstorm development is going to pretty much be dependent upon, it's going to form along the dry line in Arizona. You can clearly see the dry line when you look at the European computer model. They have plenty of other things to say, such as temperatures in Phoenix, Arizona might only drop to 90 degrees as early as Thursday night. That's due to the increase in moisture, but also the two things with this ridge, with this heat dome, is that, first of all, it's moving west, so it's going to affect Phoenix more. Secondly, it's strengthening. Now, by Tuesday next week, this ridge continues to strengthen until Tuesday next week, although the confidence in these temperatures drops as you head into next week. But 115 degrees does seem likely. That's the heat builds into the middle part of the week. And then the heat lessens. The heat starts to diminish. That's the current thinking for the end part of the week as the ridge starts to weaken. Throughout the summer, this is what happens. The ridge basically gets stronger, and then it gets less, then it's stronger. This is just what goes on. The ridge has already set itself up, and it moves east, and it expands west, and that's pretty much what we see. So, but, you know, it's just fascinating stuff in Phoenix, Arizona, because it's not what we're used to here in the Midwest. It's just not something we're used to. The National Weather Service does speak about the increase of humidity and how temperatures are going to feel warmer. They don't speak about the heat index, but they do mention temperatures will be feeling hotter. Now, let's go over to the hot spot on Wednesday, June 19th. The hot spot was Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Those states were the hottest, where temperatures went into the mid and upper 90s. We had Caribou, Maine. Temperature hit 96 degrees. That tied the record. And again, in the Washington Post, if you really want to do a thorough job, you want to see every city that broke records, you can just go to the Washington Post and look it up over there. One thing I'll tell you is that the National Weather Service of Caribou, Maine, if you go to the forecast discussion, you'll see that the heat index hit 106 on June 19th. 106. It could be, there are those that are saying it was only 103, but the Caribou, Maine National Weather Service tells us it is unofficial, only because it's not officially part of the climatological data yet. So in many stations, they don't have any record of what the heat indices are in general. But in Caribou, Maine, this was an all-time high of 106. The previous one was something like 100.6, something like that. So the heat index is significantly higher than what happened previously. And dew points in general are around 70 degrees in Maine. That's something remarkable because, you know, although there's a lot of talk about these 70-degree dew points across the country, but it's actually not so easy to find. You'll see the dew points, at least, unless the European computer model is way off. See, what's happening is the moisture is all going to this tropical storm. The wind circulation around the tropical storm is preventing a lot of that moisture from the Gulf from moving up into the Midwest. So a lot of the moisture in the Midwest right now is coming from agriculture. Some of it is coming from the Gulf, and dew points are generally in the 60s. We do have some areas where dew points are in the low 70s, and it's even as you go north, and again around Lake Erie, that seems to be where the most humid air is, but Maine as well. Some of this is due to thunderstorms, perhaps, and the evaporation of the rain is likely contributing to the humidity, but not necessarily. You'll see on the Washington Post map, you'll see temperatures did hit 99 in portions of Canada, and I did not see any hundreds, but there probably was a couple isolated hundreds. You know, the St. Louis National Weather Service has pointed out that a very big thing over there is really the potential. It's the potential heat, but the actual forecast surface temperatures for St. Louis, it's nothing special. In fact, it doesn't even hit heat advisory criteria. Highs in the mid and upper 90s, and since dew points are not really going into the mid 70s, many times they hit 75 in St. Louis, and you'll have heat indices above 105. But this time around, that's not happening. So the heat index remains under 105, at times even under 100. Heat indices anywhere between 95 and 105 for afternoon heat indices. It's very hot, no question about it. But it is more common in St. Louis. It's nothing really special, but they do say the potential heat due to the magnitude of the heat dome is really high. And there is lower confidence even there as to what's going to be happening over the next several days as you go further out than 3 days. The Chicago, Illinois area, as we pointed out, the situation is just going to be hot by the time you get to Shabbos, Saturday. Until then, you have to deal with a front that's coming in off the lake. The other fascinating area is the part of the world which is always fascinating, and that's the Arctic, Fort Yukon, Alaska. Just the temperatures going into the 80s, the low 80s, and, later next week, there's the potential for temperatures to hit 90 degrees around there, according to the European computer model. Forecast highs around 88 and 89 degrees around Fort Yukon, as we pointed out in the past. The National Weather Service isn't forecasting that far out right now, so temperatures hit 80 several times, but realize this is a city where temperatures are below zero in the winter, and you have high pressure right now over the Arctic Ocean, causing a lot of fog for areas along the Arctic coast. But for Fort Yukon, it is the Arctic. There is no nighttime at all over there, and you just have really warm temperatures. It's swimming weather. It is swimming weather, and it will be hitting heat advisory criteria of if the temperatures do indeed go into the upper 80s for the northern latitudes, 30 degrees Celsius, at least in Canada. In Canada, for the Arctic areas, they even issue excessive heat warnings when the temperatures hit 28 degrees Celsius at times, especially if it's for an extended period of time. A certain area, last summer, we had an area along the Arctic coast. It was unbelievable. It was like unbelievable. If you look at the Storm Shield app, you'll get to see that. We've covered other parts of the world in previous episodes recently. The Caspian Sea, that 87 degree water temperature, which probably doesn't actually exist, but it's probably close. And it might exist. That's what you'll see on the windy.com. It could very well exist. Here's another thing, though, that we have not pointed out recently. The United Arab Emirates in Dubai, what's going to be happening over the next week is just mind-boggling heat. We've become desensitized to it due to the intense heat that's been occurring over South Texas this year and then last year as well. But even with that, the dew points are forecasted to be significantly higher in Dubai and some of those coastal cities as well along the Persian Gulf. But it really has to be along the coast where dew points are expected to hit 85, even 86 dew points of 86 degrees. Just a continuous heat index around 120 degrees many times, even in the middle of the night. European computer model at times 2 a.m. in the morning for Dubai, heat indices around 120 degrees, temperatures 90 degrees, dew point 85 degrees. You're looking at a heat index around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's translate this into Celsius real quick. You're looking at 90 degrees is the 32 degrees Celsius. So we're mentioning 32 degrees Celsius at 2 a.m. in the morning with a dew point at 30 degrees Celsius. You're looking at super high heat indices close to 49 degrees Celsius at a continuous heat index of 49 degrees Celsius. When you go into Phoenix, Arizona again, you have Thursday night, that's the 90 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 32 degrees Celsius. Most of the world goes by Celsius. So Fort Yukon, Alaska, again, you have temperatures going up to about 31 degrees Celsius. Heat advisory criteria, that's in the 10-day forecast, according to the European computer model. The National Weather Service doesn't go that far out, so they're still dealing with just low 80s in Fahrenheit, which is about 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. Really warm stuff, solid swimming weather, as we mentioned before. In Maine, these records, again, were between 35 and 36 degrees Celsius. At times, we even got up to 37 to 38 degrees Celsius, all the way up in Canada. At the same time, this past week, it was snowing in parts of Alberta, Canada. People took a video of it, and that's going around. That's going around right now because it doesn't usually snow in mid-June, even up there in Alberta, Canada. We have a second area of a potential tropical storm off in the Atlantic Ocean. It's not there yet. Currently, sustained winds are being advertised as being 35 miles per hour. It doesn't have much more to go before becoming a tropical storm, which happens when sustained winds are at 40 miles per hour. Although it seems like they waited a little bit longer for this Alberta tropical storm, which is headed into Mexico again, producing up to 15 inches of rain in Texas. Widespread rain of 3 to 10 inches. Stay safe. Have a wonderful day. Great weekend. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. We have a powerhouse typhoon which has developed off in the Pacific Ocean. Extreme heat continues over the desert Southwest. A big shockaroo to many of you. This is especially true in regards to what's going to be going on in Alaska. We have parts of the world that are so hot right now. Temperatures are expected to go into the low 130s. What also makes the situation absolutely spectacular over there is the enormous differences between night and day. We have a remarkable weather pattern change that's going to be taking place over the next few days. We're going from one extreme to the next extreme. Small soft hail is falling with the storm. There is a possibility that snow squalls may develop. 27.1 barometric pressure. Feet of snow are falling in Japan when there's intense weather. That's a time of celebration. Just Google weather with enthusiasm and they're all going to come up.